Hi, welcome to June's Compliance Corner. We are so excited to have a few of our great customers here with us today. My name is Stephanie Euler-Rankin. I am our EVP of Attestation Services, which is a really mouthy way of really saying that I oversee quite a few of our audit teams here at A-LIGN. And I'm really excited today for these two guys that I have here on stage with me. Steve, I'm going to pass it to you and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and your organization.
Great. All right. Thank you for having me today. My name is Steve Romeo. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Breg, a medical device company in San Diego, California. We manufacture both non-surgical orthopedic devices for patients recovering from injury and have a commercial software business driving integrations with hospital EMR systems, patient care, and physician care.
Very cool. Thank you so much for that. James, I'm going to pass it to you and let you do the same.
Yes, I'm Chief Risk and Past Privacy Officer and now Compliance Officer for Environics Analytics. We're out of Toronto, offer analytics services and data products to North America, primarily Canada. Our headquarters in Toronto, as I mentioned, and they really care about security, governance, privacy, compliance, audit, BCP, and training per se, and risk. Those are the areas that matter for me. And I guess I'm pretty delighted to be here today. I'd like to share my story.
Wonderful. Well, we are very excited to hear it. And with that being said, we'll just go ahead and jump right into what our agenda is going to be today. Today is focused around what does quality really mean? We talk so much about this out in the market, and if you log into LinkedIn, you will see it every which way, split and diced, in almost every other article that you scroll down through, or at least in my news feed. That's what my algorithm does to me, I suppose. But today we're going to talk to real life clients, real world clients, and talk about what does quality mean to you, not only just from the quality of your audit report, but what does it mean to have quality in your audit process? And how does that feel when you're working with individuals who are delivering that service that you paid for? There's a lot of noise around this industry that we work in, but what does it mean to have a high quality auditor with a high quality process that delivers you a high quality audit report at the end of the day? So we're going to cover those three things, and let's just jump right in. So Erica Fry from Boomi, she's the director of IT security over there. She shared this quote with us, and I think it's kind of an interesting way to kick us off. So she said, a low quality audit can lead to significant vulnerabilities in an organization's data management and security practices. The lack of thoughtfulness in an audit may erode stakeholder trust, resulting in reputational damage and financial repercussions if compliance issues arise. Definitely agree with her. That's a big statement. And I think that, as we are working to deliver high quality audit reports, and our clients, like Steve and James, are trying to achieve a high quality audit with a final report that represents what their organizations that they serve are most interested in, there is still a heavy weight that comes around this. So let's talk a little bit about some of these results from our 2025 compliance benchmark report, and really what it means to define a quality audit. So, Steve, on your end, whenever you are thinking about actually giving your audit report out to end users of that audit report, in your mind, what are some of the key checkpoints in your mind about what makes this report a quality report representing your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the report itself is a powerful tool for our internal and external constituents to not only assure that we follow appropriate procedures and policies to ensure security, good process, and that we do what we say and we say what we do. But it also allows us as a lever to create and sustain a culture of compliance around our technology and our workflows. So that this audit document not only provides evidence that we live that day to day, but also it has helped us establish a culture of thinking towards compliance with our both enterprise and commercial systems. So it really helps us in our daily activities and thoughts around how we operate. So that document is the result, but the whole story is the journey of cultural transformation to a state of audit compliance and assurance in the document.
That's a really interesting point that you just made there, and how this is kind of like the backbone or the final product, if you will, of the culture of your organization. James, do you feel like the audit helps drive some of the culture of your security culture within your organization as well?
It definitely helps my job because I'm in compliance, and that's and we execute internal and external checks. This is the big external check. And I remember back when we started on our journey in 2017 with A-LIGN, we had frightened stakeholders. They didn't know what was coming. Of course, now they do. And the quality piece, we probably didn't understand until we got through it and then saw our first report for the first time and then recognized the value of it. But to get to it, I mean, the focus was getting a clean report, right? A favorable report. And so you set that target. That makes sense, right, Steve? You go, we want 0 remediation items because the fallback means that we missed, and you don't want to get to the miss. You want to get to success. And the other case is success.
James, I just feed on that comment. I think it's so interesting that, initially in going through an audit cycle, the teams were disappointed to find gaps in the earlier processes. And part of that, you want to find those gaps. You don't want to hide them from the teams, or you don't want to have a sense that there's something wrong about those observations. Frankly, it's great. That's the job of the auditor, to help discover those. And then the right audit partner will coach you through how to remediate and how to support the alignment of that finding. And that itself, I'm sure you saw that too, James, is an opportunity to teach the teams to become proficient at finding problems, remediating, and then crafting and pulling the evidence to support the remediation.
Good. Yeah, and then there's fine line before they get angry. So you have to measure the part that says, okay, we have this gap. Here's how we're going to phase it in. Our solution's got to be focused on getting to a spot and then getting to a better spot and then improving all the way. Yeah, but to get to the favorable report, you have to have an excellent auditor. And the audit is really around collaboration between the auditor and your stakeholder team. And those folks are the folks doing the work. They need the education, they need the preparedness, they need readiness, they need to understand what the IRLs are, the ask, and they definitely need to maintain it over time. And if they are finding the gaps and it's found early, that's good. So you can get through those. The other piece is, if you're a compliance officer like me, I need them friendly throughout the whole year, not just in October when I go through just to back up a bit, or we do a SOC 1, SOC 2, and HIPAA. At this point, SOC 3 in the month of October. So point being, it's a focused period of time for us through September and October for 20 plus stakeholders that have been focused and trained year after year to get better in succeeding on it. So the quality audit for me really is, if I do a postmortem at the end of the year, is reflecting back on what the areas can we improve, the clean report, and the success of the stakeholders. Like, where are they at, and how much work do they have to do, and is it easing up? Are they understanding more? Is it getting better for them? Because as the organization, we need to get to that standard. So it's not a need to have, it's a must.
Yeah, I think that that's a really interesting point. And before we kind of go into a little bit of the first part of your response there, James, let's talk a little bit about how important the quality of that final report is to your overall business, your strategy. You know, we heard about your stakeholders and getting everybody involved, but what's really on the table here? You know, when we talk about risk and reward, the quality of your final product, which is your audit report, the thing that you have to show, because you're not telling everyone, you know, what that process looked like to get there. So the final stage, you know, the quality of that being polished, how important is that to your overall business strategy and, you know, your trust building, your go-to-market strategies, all of those things? You know, can we talk a little bit about what that quality means to you guys?
Sure, I can take it to start. Incredibly important. And why? For two different reasons. With a enterprise and a commercial software construct here, with our commercial customers rely on that attestation and report to partner with us. And without all of that data available, there are hundreds or thousands of questions that come up through any external commercial discussion around platforming. And that tool, similarly to this quote from Boomi, Boomi is a great example of a commercial software partner that customers rely on security, stability, extensibility, and attestation. And if you're going to partner and share data, you better have good process in place, a well-structured report, and the details behind it. So I think that for our commercial customers, they receive an A-LIGN report that's polished, easy to read, has extensive detail, and is clearly very professionally and well done. And that's exceptionally important in the commercial space. And then on the enterprise side, internally, so internal IT, I find it incredibly powerful to have the crispness of that report for financial auditors, for owners, and just to have the ability to quickly read through a well-organized document to determine strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, or to look at the validation mechanisms comprised in those steps to achieve that final document. It adds a level of credibility to our own IT capability, as well as setting the bar really high with future experiences that they have. So that's my perspective on both the internal and external uses of a quality product.
Wonderful. Before we move forward, James, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I was just thinking about what Steve was talking about. So we're writing the word trust down, and trust to the clients. When they're seeing a logo, we're representing our brand. You're representing your brand. Your brand's on your report, so is mine. With an attestation, we're both saying we're operating the highest standards to meet this level. And I remember us doing another thing, and my boss was there, and she said, we're not executing our audits to tell our clients we're operating the highest standard. We're telling ourselves, which is what Steve alluded to, that we're operating the highest standards. And so the point being that report, and we've handed it, I keep tracking the registry of it, over 600 reports to date. I know they have value as an operating mechanic for us, which is answering questions by our clients and helping our sales teams in operations. So, and helping our security teams and privacy teams and risk teams just by addressing some of the questions they'd have.
Absolutely.
So there's another point to it.
Yeah, there's so many eyes on this report. I think it probably goes without saying. So as we move into what does a high quality auditor look like? I can definitely tell you that a high quality audit does not happen with the people, without the people that are behind it. So these are the folks that you work with day in and day out around the year, hopefully to your point earlier, James, that really are delivering these services to you and helping as a collaborative partner to your organization. So whenever we did our compliance benchmark survey back earlier this year, this was the result of the respondents whenever they were asked what is the most important to you when it comes to choosing an auditor. And the highest result back was an experienced audit team, followed by report quality, followed by a tech-enabled audit. And I thought the these answers were really interesting. I was flattered whenever I saw the results of these because I am an auditor, you know, through my career. So even though I don't perform audits anymore, I do have teams that do, and these are really important factors to us, and we were really excited to see them. So whenever you guys are answering this question, Steve, I'll start with you. If you were to select or rate those 5 things in order, would you have rated them the same way as our general respondents did to the survey?
Yeah, I mean, I'll briefly walk through my thoughts on it. I think an experienced audit team is a huge differentiator in the process. You need that to start with. You need, again, in a transition or transformation to a culture of audit compliance and thought process, the audit team really makes a difference in that experience. If you have an audit team that is not experienced in the execution of the process, and you have a bad experience, James was mentioning earlier, and just being the bad guy once a year through the process, if you can create a good experience, that shifts the focus of the audit. It's not a bad thing. It's a learning experience. It's an integration into the culture of the company. It's important, and every user involved in that process feels empowered to participate in it. And then you build momentum forward. So the experienced audit team is critically important. Report quality, obviously, we've already talked about the importance of the actual output of the product and the value that A-LIGN brings there. A tech-enabled audit, any accelerator or modernization effort to bring process after the first audit going forward to make it simple, streamline it, make it more effective, absolutely. And I'll leave the other 2 alone for now. Those are my primary focus areas. I agree with the prioritization. And James, what are your thoughts?
That's a good question, Steve. I can't read the other 2. What are they?
The other 2 are speed of audit and an affordable audit.
Also, they put cost at the end.
Yeah. Most respondents actually rated costs towards the end of their prioritization scale there.
Yeah, I break down the experience one. I don't know specifically how it means. I got Steve's answer. I understand. I could mean, in my world, let's call it feel. Feel being the understanding of the stakeholders, maybe the understanding of the business you're doing your audit against. It's maybe how the flow of the engagement is going, and knowing the corrective actions by the auditor and by how to manage your client to do the right things to support it in an effort to get to a favorable audit. All of that stuff probably goes into the experience. So I get that. The culture piece made sense for Steve, for sure. The tech play turns out that it becomes very important. As you see other solution providers out there now leading with tech and the AI pieces, then saying, okay, here's where you need to get to, because I'm going to make effectiveness and efficiency your goal and really make it a process where it's hands-on or continuously monitoring your evidence collection. Then that play comes into play, maybe, but if you have a Ascend, we use that platform too, that continuously grows and gets functionality adds that every year. We go, that's great, that's a good thing. And you go, okay, it does make a significant difference at the end of the day once you're trained up on it, use it year after year. Or the part where you have the evidence that's collected from last year, that you have stakeholders that are need to go back to find out where they're at to go forward and have that platform. That makes sense for you, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you think, are you alarmed that cost is down?
Yeah, I mean, cost being the least responded to element. Yeah, I mean, obviously we're cost sensitive with any engagement with any partner or vendor, but the quality and the experience is such an important aspect of it. If you don't have the quality, your cost could be triple or quadruple what you initially invest due to failures because of a partner that doesn't have the skill set or the experience. So you have to evaluate what the cost of a poor engagement would be, or a delay in delivery. And certainly when I was looking for partners for a couple of years ago for the first engagement we did. I really asked a lot of questions about the quality, cost. I was less concerned overall about the speed and the cost, more focused on the quality of the engagement. Could we create the cultural momentum and then engage people to deliver? So I think this lines up with my thoughts. Spot on.
Love that. So I just heard both of you say, if you were to go back out to market, more or less, you would be evaluating if you were going to have a quality experience with your auditor. Can we dive in just a little bit deeper about, your relationship with your auditors and the way that you communicate back and forth? And earlier, James, we heard you say you don't want to only talk to them a few months out of the year. You want to hear from them throughout the year and maybe some checkpoints, not necessarily, barking at you and constantly nagging you for anything along those lines. But can we just talk a little bit about the relationship with the auditors that you guys are looking for and what makes that a positive experience for you all? Steve, I'll let you start.
Okay.
Oh, you want me to start with that? Okay. I often jump to industry relevance, and this doesn't matter as much to be industry specific, but there are nuances in industry, but probably more the auditing team's savviness around platforms. Technology continues to change, and if the auditor doesn't have experience with SaaS-based platforms versus enterprise platforms, or SaaS workflow versus hybrid or on-prem workflow, which could have nuances in the delivery and the mechanisms used to control the governance around them, or whatever the case, I think that the key elements of a good experienced auditor and engagement are the relevance of the auditor's experience across multiple industries, having different delivery mechanism experiences, and being able to relate to the specific current company engagement, ours as an example, to really do a little bit of homework and ask some questions first about how this works. And one of the things I like about the A-LIGN process is there's a pre-engagement questionnaire that gathers a lot of insight, not just on the raw technical components of an ecosystem, architecture, delivery, workflow, but tell us about the business. How long have you guys been around? What do you do? What is it that you deliver to customers? How, asking those more open-ended questions about the business and forming an understanding of the engagement customer, us, rather than just focusing on raw mechanics, which helps paint a picture on those nuances of a business. So I like that and appreciate that. And James, please add yours. I'll stop there.
Thanks. Yeah, James.
Just to expand, Steve, I mean, that pre-engagement piece to us led into us conducting an overview session early on, late summer, where we say, here's our business, here's what's changed, here's what we are. From time to time, we've had auditor changes, right? New auditors introduced to us. So we want to ramp them up. We're a little bit different. We're a data processor. We manage clients' data through services. And that said, we're not a retailer. We're not a bank. And being in that as a processor or a supplier, it's a little bit different. And the fact is, if there are changes to IRLs or shifts at SOC 2 or SOC 1, we want to be made aware early enough. And that's the pre-engagement discussions. Tell me what's happening so I can alert my stakeholders downstream, no surprises, like you mentioned. And then you go, okay, well, now we're engaged. I know who you are. That's the field part. We've had a very successful meeting. Notes were taken. We know who you are. I'll introduce you. Now I can call you by the first name. Now I can call you if I have a question. That's pretty important for us pre-audit. In the course of when you're executing the audit, the back and forth conversations and the examples, for example, if you have something that a software developer for us has a question, says, I really don't understand this, or this question was not the same as last year. We have two options, right? Me and my we'll go back, or the place experiment will go back to the auditor and say, what do you mean by this? Is the answer the same as last year? Or is this a change or something? But what happened over the time is that you're now putting in examples. For example, this could be the type of answer or evidence that could submit. That answers the question, and just cut back on the communications. So that'd be a good example of an engagement that's working and getting better.
I love that. Yes. And I heard you guys, a lot about the groundwork up front and setting a good foundation early on in the engagement so that you can continue on. Let's talk a little bit as that engagement goes on and you've had your fieldwork meetings, you've had those conversations with your auditors, and now you're rounding up those final items and you're trying to cross the finish line, because we all know for any project that we are carrying, sometimes the finish line is that last 5% is the hardest part to complete and get across the finish line. From your experience, what like kind of checks and balances have you guys had in place in your audits to get across the finish line in the last 1 to 5% of your engagement? James, I'll let you answer that first.
Well, yeah, it's a good point. I talked about the post-mortem already. That's at the end, about looking at everything. But the checkpoints throughout, right, is in your evidence collection or your stakeholder engagement, each phase, the auditor assessment piece, the feedback loop that says I need more here or I need more there. All of those things have somebody from the compliance department monitoring let's not call it the anxiety level, but maybe the fatigue level would be a better thing of our engagement, ensuring that we're getting stuff back at a quick fashion on our side, because that's what we're in control of. And so we're making sure that those checks are in place. The second piece is we have meetings internally. And these meetings internally have an open forum and discussion around how are things going. And we do it with each division, because let's say we have 7 or 8 departments that are involved. Let's call them 2 or 3 stakeholders each. We have a meeting with those folks, and it's not a big meeting. It's a focused meeting on the things that they need to care about, and we help them. That's the third piece, because if there is going to be any turbulence, gaps, we need to close them, and we're going to help them from the compliance and risk department. And that's what builds the trust within the business that we're going to get it done. Mm-hmm. I'll think of more, Steve. But you can go.
Steve, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add, I was chuckling a bit at the beginning, because that last 5% of the project, there's a little bit of fatigue, and it's usually the larger requests that no one wanted to deal with, so they're just left in the pool. And so I went with we do a lot of software engineering internally, and we're an agile house using Scrum rituals. So we just do a daily stand-up of 10, 15 minutes, and the daily stand-up with the key constituents internally that are driving the audit, just to check in. And we just compare notes on open tickets and see if we can help each other. And usually, twofold. One, I try to set the expectation that if you have 40 tickets or engagements or data elements together, don't look at all 40 on day one, parse it out, take on one every other day or break it out. But if there's a list of them at the end, the teams will work together in a stand-up and gather the data together. And a little bit of camaraderie and a little bit of support, and maybe throwing in some extra like a lunch celebration or something. Take everyone out to lunch to celebrate getting it done when they get through that last 5%. Just something, because people are usually pretty tired after doing all that work, and that final push gets us across the line.
Definitely. All of the items that we've kicked the can down the road long enough that we have to finally cross those. It's always interesting to kind of hear from my perspective what you guys are doing on your end to kind of get through that final push and get to the celebratory factor of having the audit completed and having it nice and clean. I could probably talk about this for hours, but for the sake of our listeners, I will move on here and transition into this piece that was a byproduct of our compliance benchmark report from earlier this year. And this is just a few questions that we have released when we are encouraging our clients or any future clients to ask potential audit vendors when they are shopping around. And I think that you guys are a really great set of folks to give some advice to what you're looking for, what you should be asking when you are going out and shopping for an auditor, because it is a big deal to have a relationship with someone. As we've heard you both say, that relationship is not just a transactional 1 week out of the year type of relationship. We talk a lot. We have a lot of big milestones that we hit together, and we're really helping you guys do something that's very, very integral and important to your business. So some of these questions that we have released as a resource, include asking the auditor what accreditations and certifications they hold and they can audit to. The auditor is always audited. So I think that that's an interesting perspective that a lot of people don't think about. We also encourage people to ask for references and case studies from satisfied customers, just like the two of you. So I always think that that's kind of interesting as well. And encouraging people to compare final reports across the industries that they operate in, thinking about technology and how that helps drive the audit, or in general, what the expectations are for the audit team to deliver a best-in-class audit experience. And, I always joke about this. I always tell my mother-in-law, adults don't like surprises. And that is what we talk about a lot at A-LIGN too. We don't like a surprise policy. So asking things like that, I think, are a very interesting way to start your buying process. And you guys have been key players in navigating the waters of buying an audit and selecting an audit vendor. We've heard a lot from you today. So I have a couple of questions that I would like to ask you guys in helping the viewers of this session also select a quality auditor. So for you guys, what part of the audit process really highlights that you selected the right partner? What is that? If you had to just pick one item, what would that item be? And can you expand on that? And Steve, I'll start with you.
Just one, huh?
Just one. I know this is always the hardest question, because it's hard sometimes to just select one, especially when you're balancing things in a very technologically advanced world, right, that we are living in. I think that probably makes this question even a little bit more challenging to you, just out of the nature of AI advancements and technology advancements in general.
Yeah. I mean, understanding the value of the end product, I think, is really important. And selecting an org, a partner that understands the importance of the finished product and can instruct you on how to get to it is ultimately what we as customers are looking for. So that's really critical for that alignment between partner and how ironic your company name is A-LIGN. But having that alignment between the two, I think, then yields a vision of what we're going to achieve, and then having case studies and examples of others that have been on that journey and what they've achieved through it. Reflect back on your Boomi quote. You model organizations that have transformed through this process already and add a lot of value. So I think synthesizing the quality of the tool and then setting those expectations, that would be the one thing I'd pick. And then obviously guiding on that journey. So I'll leave it there and pass it over to James.
Wonderful.
So the question is one item. Tell me again.
one item that you feel like is just really the most important to you when selecting an auditor, an audit vendor for your organization? What's the number one key thing that you are looking for if you had to just select one?
Let's call it a successful outcome. Our goal is to get clean reports, favorable reports, which will identify that we're operating at best practice, which is what our business needs to do, has to do.
Sure
And I
thing.
work back from that. And what comes from that, of course, is like Steve talked about, is building a culture around it, engaging stakeholders, involvement by the business, a top-down kind of thought process saying this is very important for us. Marketing communications that support it. When we pass audits, we do publications and celebrate. So it's almost like but you can only do that if you're achieving. I mean, you can do it because it's a journey, but for us, successful journeys where we're heading, and with A-LIGN helping us.
Yeah, I think a partnership view is really important whenever you are undertaking such a large effort, right? This isn't always the easiest process. It wasn't designed to be the easiest process to pass. I will say, we'll use air quotes there. But I think probably identifying a partner that will help guide you through it is a little bit, if I were summarizing between you and Steve's answers, a partner that can guide you through what the process is going to look like, so that you can have a successful outcome, because at the end of the day, you are the driver of your own success and your organization's success. It's not always up to the auditor. It's up to the auditor to help guide you and set you up for what I've heard you say. Are there changes coming down the pipeline for SOC 2? Are there changes in the industry? Are there new audit services or frameworks that we need to consider, keeping you guys in the loop so that you can do the real meat and potatoes of the audit and deliver on a secure system? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add, one of the questions my boss asks, and she runs the business, is tell me about audit in industry. What's growing? What's happening? And that would be a question I would ask A-LIGN every year. What is hot in your world? SOC 2 scoring that? Are they doubling? ISO's 2701? Very important. HIPAA, asking the questions, ensuring that industry-wide, I'm on this track, but what is everybody doing? And knowing that, that's a very important question for us.
Yeah, that's a really important point. I think it is vital to have an auditor who can keep you updated and can tell you, hey, there are huge changes coming with AI out in the world. And we all know that. What are the frameworks that we need to start considering? What are the changes to the existing frameworks? And whether that's AI related or not, it could go, several different tracks, and it depends on the topic of the year. We all have different items, but I think that that's a really good point. Steve, if you were to add a question to this list, when you were advising maybe a peer of yours, when they are going through the purchasing process, do you have any other questions that you would add to this list of great questions to ask the auditors that you're vetting?
Well, I think you just embedded my thought into your comments specific to AI, relevance of new emerging technologies in the audit cycle. So what is the posture, the experience, the knowledge of Gen AI in the enterprise, the impact to the audit cycle, the exposure to a company, and forthcoming controls related to AI enablement throughout the enterprise. So I would sum that up by saying the question should be to the auditor, what is your posture position on newer technologies and providing audit guidance on those technologies, so emerging technologies? That would be a question I'd have them ask.
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. I want to encourage everyone to ask that question as you are vetting auditors. I will not steal the thunder of next month's compliance benchmark report session, because I will be back on actually with Stephen Ferretti, who heads up our ASIN department, and talking a little bit about what A-LIGN's doing and what, how we're preparing our auditors and whatnot. So I'm not going to answer that question because I won't steal the thunder. I promised him I wouldn't do that today, but I strongly encourage listeners to add that to the list of questions that you would ask potential vendors in your future. I think that was a great addition. Okay, we're kind of coming close to the end here, and I want to ask this question because I think it's always kind of interesting. We've talked a lot of positive things, and I want to end on a positive note too, but sometimes these are kind of interesting, a little bit entertaining even. In the purchasing process, or even in the audit process, once you have selected a vendor and you are executing your audit with them, maybe there are things that happen, red flags, if you will, that happen that maybe make you consider going with a different audit vendor. Do you guys have any fun stories? If not, what would be a red flag for you, either in the purchasing process or in the audit execution process?
Yeah.
And James, I'll start with you this time.
That's a good question. And what came to mind was we were trying to understand our lanes as stakeholders. We had some items that had shared responsibilities where two different groups had to work together collaboratively to provide the evidence items back. And they didn't know who had the ball a lot of times. And to have those kind of those meetings that say, okay, I really need you to do this piece or you to do this piece, and then have them work together, knowing that the next year, potentially, they're in two different groups. They might have, and it could be in a different spot. So as a compliance officer, what we had to do is understand the IRLs and who they belong to and where they flowed. And we always have to keep an eye on that through the year. And I call it a challenge, a red flag. I call it something that if you're a compliance officer on our side, something you got to manage. That's your job all year round, is watching those dynamics to ensure that you're still effective and efficient to get the solutions and the balls don't drop. I mean, that's the key.
Absolutely. Yeah, delegation's key. Clear boundaries, always key. So yeah, I could not agree more. Steve, how about you? Any red flags that would stick out to you in either the buying process of selecting the right auditor for your organization or executing the audit?
Yeah, I mean, in the selection process, we live in a world of ridiculous acronyms, and pay attention to what someone's saying, because people become very savvy at pitching acronyms and question everything and understand the perspective that they're trying to share. So in the selection process, the smooth talking versus the content, let's just say. And then in the audit process, I think the key is asking the audit partner around the process, the introductory process and the data collection process. And, and the audit cycle is so important, but do they have examples of past engagements they can share? What were the highlights from the customer's perspective on that engagement relative to the delivery? And, just about past experiences, and ask in your own vertical, what companies have you worked with in a high-tech space, a life science, a med device? And, ask a tough question, give me an example of an engagement that didn't go well and why, and what did you learn from it? So I think if you can be adaptive in your questions and your audit partner is honest, which you can always tell if someone's squirming or not, then that'll just help the selection process, in my opinion.
Yeah, I could not agree more. It's funny that you say that about acronyms. We live in a world of acronyms, it feels like, sometimes in the audit space, and trying to make sure that we are not talking in constant acronym is something that we actually address every once in a while around here. Let's make sure that everyone understands and we're talking at the right level for everyone to understand, and talking like we're introducing this to your mother. My mom shares and talks about what we do here at A-LIGN sometimes, and I always kind of laugh to myself and wonder, what does she say when I'm not around? Do I explain it in a way that's comprehensive enough that we can all talk about it in complete layman's terms, and make sure that we are communicating in a way that's relatable and easy to understand and follow? So I think that's actually a great point. We have it looks like we have a question that's come in through the chat. And the question is, if the frameworks and standards are defined and the auditor follows a defined process for assessing and validating those controls, then where does the lack in quality come in? And I'm going to answer this first, and then I'm going to ask a follow-up question to you guys. So when the standard is set and it is not, it doesn't have much room for interpretation, it's very rigid standard, I would say that the lack of quality could come in the depth in which the auditor is testing individual control, right? So validating that populations are accurate and complete, validating that the process is followed throughout the organization, and understanding the true scope of the audit. I think that is the most important. I'm going to ask a follow-up question though, Steve. I'll ask you this. Sometimes the framework does have room for interpretation, and it does not always have to be extremely prescriptive. So give me just your general thoughts on the auditor bridging that gap for you, the importance of maybe understanding your industry and how you operate. What are your general thoughts on audit frameworks that have just a touch of flexibility in them?
Yeah, well, let me just share an example with Arvid's question there on how there could be a gap in terms of lack of quality on a particular question, data gathering, and then execution back to the attestation. If your scope, which you need to invest in your scope definition and understand that. If you're scoping a commercial system, commercial systems have touch points back to enterprise systems. And if your scope is commercial and you don't vet or check the enterprise components of that request, let's say it's a firewall request and you're looking at one set of firewall logs that you're gathering for your attestation, but you don't consider the commercial or vice versa. And in theory, the teams might feel, the team on the ground, exclusive of the audit partner, but the internal teams feel that that's adequate, or you don't want to go get more because it requires more work. The auditor in a quality audit will challenge that and ask for all those perspectives because they've seen that before. And I think the framework and standards are defined, the language is clear, but it does boil down to scope and then understanding the impact of the request and gathering all of that. That's where I think you get in trouble, would be one example of an exception.
Absolutely. I could not agree more with that. It looks like we have another question here around technology. So James, I'll leave this one for you, but in your opinion, how does technology foster a quality audit?
Well, the technology that we're leveraging for our audits right now has the ability for us, the ease of use, right? For example, where you have maybe junior to senior stakeholders that have to use a tool, and their ramp up time is really important. Easy. So for them to be able to use the tool effectively, quickly, is pretty important. So the tech piece to that is important. Then you go into its functionality. And if functionality features stuff like go back and look at past evidence or look at related type IRLs, so that you can answer 3 questions at a time for efficiency purposes, and you can group them by stakeholder, and then they can see, here's the 5 things I got to care about today, because that's all I have time for. I mean, again, it goes back to effectiveness and efficiencies. So the tech helps us in processing more smoothly. And the tool's ease of use is everything.
Yeah,
I
I
think.
agree. I think that it is really important to have an easy to use, streamlined, you know, interface, and allows for easier adoption, allows for hopefully a way for you all to keep your audits rolling in the right direction. I know we have a lot of clients that use the status updates and the trackers on those, the delegation tools within the information request list of Ascend, to divide and conquer, maybe get across the last 5% of the audit and really wrap things up, move efficiently. And even if efficiency isn't our primary goal, getting done in the snap of fingers, we still have a job to do. We still have to move forward. And at the end of the day, you guys probably have many key stakeholders whose primary job is not getting through this audit. It is another functional job that has many other responsibilities in it. So I love that answer. And I greatly appreciate you guys joining us. As we wrap this up, I would encourage everyone to download our compliance benchmark report from 2025. It's got some really great information in it, and it's got some of the key statistics that you saw here today. We also have lots of resources that are available to help you in whatever your endeavor may be, whether it's selecting a new audit vendor, determining the quality of your audit, determining what other services are available that we can provide to you. So strongly encourage you all to download that, and tune in next month as well when we do start talking a little bit more about some of our audit technologies. But thank you both so much for joining me today. I think it's invaluable to hear from real life clients and real life stories what matters most to you guys and your organizations. I think that it just adds so much color to the conversation, and you are much more enjoyable to listen to than I am. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Absolutely. Thanks all. Have a great afternoon.